morning and welcome to Policing TV, where I'm delighted to be joined by Richie Maddock, who is the founder and managing director of Lynchpin Solutions. Richie, pleasure to have you here on Policing TV. We're here to talk about Lynchpin plus your work with Lincolnshire Police. Let's start, though, by you telling us something about Lynchpin.
Okay, good morning, brothers. So, Lynchpin is a Lincolnshire-based consultancy. Myself and my business partner, Anne Garrett, there's just the two of us. And we have been working together as individuals for many, many years, nearly 30 years. And I was in the continuous improvement business after leaving the army. And I suddenly realised that it doesn't matter what continuous improvement you do, if the culture of the organisation is not right, nothing as much is going to work, to be honest. So I got heavily involved into understanding culture in terms of the academic and the theoretical, etc., etc. And from then on, it was a case of, well, I realised that to do anything, to improve anything, really, the culture must be at the heart of what you're trying to do. So we set up Lynchpin in 2012, I believe, off the top of my head, yes, 2012. And we've been supporting mainly public sector organisations, but we have had private sector such as Next and Barclays and Tesco's, but predominantly local authorities and police organisations to help them with what starts off as an improvement journey, but then we obviously engineer it so that they start looking at their culture because we believe that's where the real difference can be made.
So there's quite an array of brands, very well-known brands there that you've mentioned. You came to the attention of Lincolnshire Police for absolutely the right reasons, not for any of the untoward, and then were invited to work with Lincolnshire Police on their own culture change. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it started with the last deputy chief, actually, Jason Harwin. They, in simple terms, they knew they had to do something about their culture, but they didn't quite know what. And a member of Lincolnshire Police staff, their continuous improvement manager, had worked with us before when he was in Lincolnshire County Council. And he said, I know this organisation, they're close to home, I think it'd be worth a chat. So that's how we got in through the door, so to speak. And then when they said to us, we want to do a culture change programme, I said, from what to what? Which obviously flummoxed them a bit because that's nobody ever really thinks about that. They think they just need to get better, but they don't actually articulate in what way they want to get better. So we started the journey then by saying, well, actually, let's find out what culture you need to have in place to be as successful as you want to be. And the best way we believe that we can do that is by asking the whole organisation, not just the leaders, but saying, what do you think are the critical cultural characteristics for Lincolnshire Police to be successful into the future? And we did that exercise, and that brought out 5 things, which from then on became the centrepiece of all the things that we've done moving forward.
So those 5 things, I'm not going to ask you, unless you wish to volunteer them, what those 5 things were. But is it always the same 5 things that emerge, or is it different depending on the organisation?
It's different depending on the organisation. Whilst there are similarities, because at the end of the day, it's a word, the meanings of that word mean different things to different organisations. So part of it is understanding to say, for example, you want to be an innovative organisation. That's a fantastic word, but what does it really mean for you in the context of your organisation? So we need to understand what it really means for those people before we work on doing anything. So they vary across all organisations. It really depends what they want for their future. Public service centre pretty similar, if I must admit, but but private sector are very much more geared to grabbing customers, making profit, etc., etc. So there is a difference, but the main thing is the culture is unique to an organisation. You cannot copy it. You can't hopefully do what everyone else has done. You've got to find what matters to you, and that's what Lincolnshire did.
So you mentioned that you started with the conversation with the senior management team, or those within the senior management team in Lincolnshire, and came to understand what it was that they felt the culture was at the moment and ought to move to, or they wish to move to. When you started speaking to others in the organisation, were they all of like mind, or did you find that there were quite some differences across the organisation?
We found actually a lot of consistency, um, a consistency of theme. So there was a lot of things. There were four things that came out, and they won't mind me going into it. It was the subject of consistency, or more to the point, the lack of consistency, the lack of management behaviours and leadership behaviours, the lack of policy deployment from one area to another, which you're going to get in a very large geographical organisation. So there's going to be subcultures all over the place, and there's lack of consistency was causing a problem. There was a lot of cynicism. We've been down this journey before, and the public are determined to give us a good bashing anyway, and the media and so on. So we're up against it. So there was a lot of cynicism about what real difference we could bring. The third one was communications and engagement. A lot of issues about that, but not anything that was insurmountable, but there was a theme. And the fourth and final theme was the perceived gap between senior leadership and the rest of the organisation. And that void in the middle needed to be bridged. So those are the themes that set the tone for the culture strategy that was developed to take the organisation forward for the next 3 years.
So it sounds like senior management bought into the need for the journey and the diagnosis that effectively you made, having spoken and engaged with others across the organisation. How then did you support Lincolnshire Police taking that forward?
Well, first thing I must say about Lincolnshire Police is that they were really committed to this. We've learnt through experience that a lot of people, it's a box ticking exercise. We have to do something on culture. We've done something, tick the box, move on. And we said right from the start that we're not interested in working with people like that because there's no value in it, to be honest. It is a game, and it takes time. And Lincolnshire, for the last 3 years that we've worked with them, have been committed to this in every angle you can look at. So that's been really promising. And our part in this was when we started them on the journey, and then we took a back seat, but advised them accordingly and worked with them to develop their own journey. So in a way, it was all owned by the Chief Constable and the force, but we were providing that critical friend to say, well, actually, we think you might want to do something differently because we're bringing an external view. And that's been the huge value that I think we've added in the last couple of years, and which was reinforced by the chief when he left by saying the value you've added has been great.
Now, we on Policing TV will be having a chance to speak with a number of others, key stakeholders involved in this journey. So, Chris, sorry, I beg your pardon, Richie, we're not just accepting your view. The reason I mentioned Chris, ACC Chris Davison, is that we've had a short conversation with you and him for Policing TV, and indeed we will have a more in-depth conversation, and indeed with others across the force that have been engaged in this programme. But from your point of view then, Richie, your point of view, rather than asking for you to adopt the view from Lincolnshire Police, from your point of view, this has been a successful period of time, successful engagement where you've been satisfied with the way in which you've been able to engage with the force.
Absolutely, yes. We found it very. We've been very welcome in Lincolnshire from the minute we started, and that always helps. And it's been a very rewarding experience.
And so, what's the future then? What happens next?
Well, we'll be developing now for them the new strategy because that runs out at the end of March. So that's the 3 year up. So we'll be looking to rejuvenate because they've committed to doing another strategy for the next 3 years. And that'll be looking at all areas and integrating it across the whole business. So one area we are focused on now is they're calling the program Every Contact Leaves a Trace, based on the DNA example I know. But it's about how do they operate as viewed by the public and the communities they serve, and how does the culture impact on that? So we've been looking to bring culture to the external as well as the internal.
Well, I also know that ACC Chris Davison, with whom you've been working closely most recently, has now been asked to take a lead in a National Police Chiefs Council, so a national program that examines and addresses culture. So the seeds that you've planted in Lincolnshire is now going national through Chris, I believe. So more on that in due course. But for the time being, Richie Maddock of Lynchpin Solutions, really grateful to you setting out that work that you've been doing supporting Lincolnshire Police. And I wish you and the force every success in the continuation of that work.
Thank you very much indeed, Bernard.